Some heartbreaking news a short while ago on the search for a 2-year-old boy snatched by an alligator at a Disney World resort yesterday.
We recovered the remains of the 2-year-old from the water, and that body has now been turned over to the Orange County Medical Examiner's Office for an autopsy. The 2-year-old is Lane Graves. His body was completely intact. There's likely no question in my mind that the child was drowned by the alligator.
The child's body was found by divers today after he was dragged away by a gator in water near the resort where his family was staying. His father fought to wrestle him from the animal's jaws, but was sadly unable to set him free. More now on this tragic development from Peter Ducey, who's live from Orlando. Peter?
And Kimberly, most families that visit Disney World want to take their young kids to meet Mickey or Minnie, but today Matt and Melissa Graves got a visit from the sheriff and a priest who told them after a night and a day of waiting that their 2-year-old son Lane had been found in 6 feet of water about 10 to 15 feet out in the murky man-made Seven Seas Lagoon between the Grand Floridian Resort and the Magic Kingdom, really one stop on the monorail between the two. We know that last night, according to the latest information that we have, Lane, the 2-year-old, was playing along the water's edge. Disney says that they believe a movie night that happens in that general area had just wrapped up. An alligator somehow appeared, got a hold of him. His dad tried his best to keep a grip on his toddler son, but he could not. He was taken out. He was found somewhere in the general area of where he went missing, but the water was very murky, so it was very difficult. Now for investigators, the focus becomes finding ways to prevent this in the future, but also finding the alligator responsible for Lane Graves' death. We're told that so far they have found and killed 5 alligators. They've looked inside. They did not find any remains of Lane, and as it turns out, his body was intact. They believe that he drowned, but they just aren't sure if one of those 5 is responsible for Lane's death. That's going to be up to the medical examiner. So we do now know that they found Lane. The family has that information, but it is obviously going to be a very difficult trip back home to Nebraska for them. Kimberly.
Okay, heartbreaking story. Thank you for that update, Peter. So, you know, we obviously all have some thoughts and reflections on this. It's a very, very sad case, and yet another tragedy happening in Orlando. We'll take it around the table. Juan, get your thoughts.
Well, I mean, obviously, we've just lived through the whole situation with the Cincinnati Zoo and the child and the gorilla. So there are lots of thoughts about children, parents in dangerous situations. Yeah. And the second thing here is that I'm surprised that the body was intact, to be blunt. The Daily Mail has reported they thought, they interviewed the lifeguard, and the lifeguard said the child was not just 2 feet in, but 10 feet into the water. So we don't know exactly all that took place here. But I tell you this, I remember being on vacation down in Disney when I had very young children, and we were on a boat having dinner, and the waiter said to us, "Oh, we'll save some of the rolls and just throw them over the side afterwards. Oh, the gators will come get them." And we thought he was just playing with the kids, you know, like being like, you know, oh, it's this pirate scary stuff. So Ray, my daughter, actually took a roll and flung it. And my God, you should have seen the jaws just pop out of the water. I didn't realize that was a real threat.
Okay, that's disturbing. Okay, like, don't feed the alligators or the birds. Okay, bowling.
So, all right, so I spent 5 years living in Central Florida, in Orlando, just outside of Orlando. Gators are everywhere. If you live there, you know gators are everywhere. That said, this family is from Nebraska. They might not know that. Also, Disney is a controlled atmosphere. Everything seems safe. Everything seems okay. That will lull someone to sleep. A lot of people are saying, well, why would a father let a 2-year-old toddler wander into the water? You don't expect that. At Disney, it's just there's the feeling of comfort, of control, and safe. I've been to this lagoon. I've been to Disney. I've been to the Grand Floridian. You feel okay. Look, in my opinion, this is not Disney's fault. There's a sign that says no swimming. This is not the parent's fault. You don't expect your kid to be dragged off by an alligator. It's just a terrible accident. It's no different than if your kid, you take your eye off for a second, your kid wanders into traffic. Right. It happens all the time. It's awful. We feel for the Graves family. Central Florida, and just very quickly touch on that. I feel terrible for the people of Central Florida. Think of 1 week's time. Terrible. You have the voice singer, Mrs. Grimmy, I believe her name was, then the 49 victims at the gay nightclub, and now the Graves family here. These families, this community, this sheriff has spent way too much time on TV for all the wrong reasons. And obviously all our thoughts and prayers go out to those people and continue to. Yeah,
it's a very sad day now. I mean, it just makes you feel less safe. Like Bowling said, you know, Disney is supposed to be, and this is one of the resorts that's accompanying, you know, that general area, the safest, like, happiest place, you know, on earth. And then we also heard that the shooter had gone to try and case Disney as well.
Right, I was just going to bring that up. So that Disney yesterday had to also deal with the news that came from the sheriff and the FBI in the investigation that Omar Mateen had actually cased Disney World in order to see if that was a place where he could carry out his terrorist attack, but he decided that the target was too hard, and that's why he decided to go to Pole's nightclub instead. I agree with Eric. These tragedies, tragedies have happened to families for as long as families have been around, but I think that we were talking not too long ago, and Greg made the point that stories like this used to be local stories. But now, because we have international news and 24/7 cable access and Facebook and all these stories become so much more magnified. And so hopefully the good thing of that will be that these families feel that they have more support, and the prayers that come in for them all around, not just the Orlando area, but the country and the world will give them some comfort in their grief.
I mean, how do you recover, you know, from a loss of a child like that, especially right when you're right there, standing and you fought and couldn't save them? Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just are shocked that these creatures roam. It's even when you see them in their habitat, which could be this is a habitat, you're even shocked when you see them there. I have a friend who lives in an area where there are a lot of gators, and it just seems even odd, and you see them in the water, but that's where they live. When a tourist from whether it is Nebraska or Hamburg, Germany, sees a sign that says no swimming, they're probably assuming it's a rule because it's nighttime. You know, they're not thinking, oh, it's no swimming because there are alligators, because they find it hard to believe that these two things would actually mingle. I mean, what's interesting is you will have an autopsy. You'll find out if there were bites and the size of the bites and things like that, the grim details. But yeah, you're right. Nobody expects this, even in the habitat.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether there's injury to the body that they'll discover. I mean, obviously the child was drowned, you know, by the alligator. The alligator is, and whether it's one of the five, and you know, fine, any of them. The result is a terrible loss and tragedy, you know, loss of this child. And our thoughts and prayers go out to this family. You know, God bless them. This is a very tough time for them.